We've all been lonely, so let's talk about it. In my last video, I talked about chapter 3 of this book, It's Never Too Late to Begin Again by Julia Cameron. She's the gal who wrote The Artist's Way, which was really popular about 15 years ago, and I even did the course that was outlined in the book back then, and it was hugely helpful. This book is a little different. It is actually written for people who are basically in retirement, like I'd say over 50, who are looking for a way to engage with their inner artist in a time in life where they might have the time or the resources to do that. So I find this book really, really helpful right now. Let's talk about the two types of loneliness. There's the loneliness you feel when you're not truly lonely, you're just alone, and the loneliness that you feel when you feel separate and disconnected. This is a time in life when you become somewhat disconnected and don't always see the possibility for becoming reconnected. Because in retirement, the thought is you won't go back to work, you won't be working with those people again, you just live your life, do the mechanics of daily living until you die. Once you're disconnected from your work life, and retirement's a pretty big disconnect, there's this feeling of loss that we all go through, and it's very similar to a grieving period. You are no longer in that job, and so the loss is very real. You don't interact with those same people on a day-to-day basis, and for many people you are alone. Now there are a couple of other different types of loneliness. For some people it could be a late-in-life divorce. Also the empty nest, which although you don't have to feel separated from your children, there may be an actual physical distance between you now. Maybe going off to college, or the last one's grown up, gotten a job in a home of their own. I can tell you from having experienced all three of these types of loneliness that this too shall pass. In some cases, the disconnection may be with the person that you're married to, although there's no desire for a divorce or a separation. There is a feeling of, now that your lives are different, maybe one or both of you are retired, or the empty nest where a child has left the home and changed the dynamic of the relationships. That has caused a sense of loneliness where you're with this really important person that you love very much, but you don't feel connected to them in the same way. And while you may be certain about what you want to do, they are not certain about what they want to do, so they look to you to support them, and that may not fit in with what your plan is. Or it could be the totally opposite direction, where they are certain of what they're doing in retirement, and you're feeling a little bit lost. There's a Marie Forleo book I'm working on in this series called Everything is Figureoutable, and she talks about taking action as the quickest way to handle anxiety about a situation. And definitely there's anxiety in feeling lonely for a lot of reasons. You don't feel like you have a team to back you up. You don't have that person in your life saying, go get 'em, tiger. So you definitely feel alone. And what I'm finding from writing the morning pages and the weekly memoir is I noticed these feelings of loneliness pop up throughout my life. Everybody had a moment of loneliness in their youth, whether it was the horrors of junior high and all the body changes we go through, or moving and being the new kid in a school, or even when you go to college or have your first job where you feel totally out of your depth. So there are lots of ways to feel lonely that we've had in our lives, but because this loneliness isn't caused by the exact same things that we had causing loneliness in our earlier lives, it feels different, but it's actually not very different. Feeling lonely and disconnected is very similar to the kind of loneliness and disconnection that we have felt throughout life. And when I say this too shall pass, I'm not kidding. It really will. But if you want to move it along a little bit faster, you can take some actions. One of the actions you can take is to actually start journaling, looking at the feelings of loneliness, writing about it, thinking through your past and bringing up those experiences in your writing so that you can look and see, where is this loneliness coming from? And am I really lonely, or am I simply alone? Or Am I lonely, or am I simply unsure of my direction now? Or am I lonely? You can alter your perception, and that's a big, tall order. Altering your perception in a moment of once feeling fulfilled and having people in your life that were uplifting and encouraging, and now feeling the loss of that. These are 3 ways to address those feelings of loneliness where you feel disconnected from your community. First of all, start writing. Tell your story. Pull out your journal on a regular basis, whether it's every morning or every afternoon or even every other day. But try and do it as often as you're able, and free write. Free write on the topic of how you feel and your connection to your community, to your family, your friends, or to your former life. Make that the subject of your journaling, and you're going to find all kinds of things will pop up. Ways in which you can reconnect, ways that you can feel good in your own company without having to have other people around, and the ways that you can acknowledge your service in your previous work and think about how you want your life to look now. So write. And I really recommend, as does Julia Cameron in the book, It's Never Too Late to Begin Again, writing by hand on paper. If that's not possible for you, there are all kinds of other accommodations. You can type into your computer or a typewriter or record into your phone. There are all kinds of apps for that. But really, I think there's a benefit to putting your hand to paper. There's some sort of brain-body connection that happens when you actually use your hand to write something out. It'll actually start to figure itself out as it spills out of you onto the page. And if you get to a part where you're thinking, I don't know what else to write, write that. I don't know what else to write. Think about who you are now, as opposed to trying to be someone that you were in the past. Really honor the person you've become, because as you grow older, you do grow in wisdom. Okay, so that's one thing, is handwriting in a journal. I use a journal that looks like this. This is my Designing Your Life journal. They come in all different colors. It's very cool. This is my, which one is this? Oh, this is my Marie Forleo Figure Outable journal. I like to use different colors because I don't always label my journals, so it's just easier to find if I can grab the yellow one or the blue one. I know that I'm in a particular journal, so I don't journal the wrong things in the wrong notebook. The second way I encourage you to look at your loneliness, that is the disconnected feeling of loneliness, is to actually learn how to enjoy your own company. In your journaling, you're actually going to start to write about things that you enjoy as well as things that you don't enjoy. Understand this journal is for nobody but you, so if you need to keep it hidden, find yourself a good hidey hole and write down everything. But what is going to crop up in addition to your complaints is the thing or several things that bring you joy. And often these are things that you do by yourself. I love to cook. And one of the things I'll do is I'll put on a podcast. The Adventure Zone is my personal favorite. And I listen while I cook a meal. And it's lovely. It's a great way to enjoy the evening. I'm doing it by myself. There are lots of activities that we enjoy doing alone. TV watching, I'm going to put way down at the bottom of the list. And honestly, most of my TV viewing is done in community. I've watched television with my friends, with my husband and my son, with my other kids. I just don't necessarily like to watch television by myself unless there's something very specific, like a documentary or something that I want to watch that nobody else wants to watch. So look around and see, do you enjoy walking in nature? Do you want to take a camera or your phone with you and take pictures of things? I've taken tons of pictures of really cool natural things in my area around my house since we moved here. And I cannot tell you how connected I feel to the natural world when I do that. It's definitely not lonely, although it is an activity that I do alone. Once you've discovered that thing that you enjoy, or could be more than one activity, of course, that you enjoy doing by yourself, really savor it while you're doing it. Really enjoy it. Think about how much fun you're having. And if it's something that you thought you would enjoy and you don't worry about it. Just switch to another activity. And that brings me to my final piece of advice. So let's talk about reaching out to people from your past, or even people that you know in your present, but you don't know well and you'd like to know them better. One of the advantages that we have right now is this thing called the internet where you're watching me. So if you know someone from your past that you felt connected to, but you've lost touch with them for whatever reason, there is the opportunity to reach out. There are all kinds of social media that you can use, email, searches for people online. I encourage you to reach out to someone. You might be surprised. I've actually reached out to a couple of teachers from my past and let them know how meaningful it was to have them in my life when I was young and impressionable. And it did make a difference. I had a teacher named Terry Steele who was an amazing English teacher when I was in 7th grade. And I felt a little lost at that time because I wasn't quite sure who I was in the world. I was the new girl in school. I was too tall. I was starting puberty. All these things were happening in my life. And Mr. Steele saw something in my writing. Maybe he just saw a girl lost, and he helped me find my writing voice. And I've been writing ever since. And that made a huge difference in my life. But I had lost touch with him. So I took a chance and found him on Facebook and reached out to him and let him know what a difference he made. And I told him who I was and when he taught me, and he remembered me, which was cool. And he was so kind, and it felt so good to reach out and let him know that he had influenced me to become a teacher, which I was for nearly 30 years. So that's one way that we can reach out beyond our loneliness. Another one is to actually look around the community where you're living now and see, are there people in the community that you find really interesting? Someone in your neighborhood that you think you'd like to get to know better? Someone through your volunteerism or through some sort of group that you belong to, a book club, a spiritual group, whatever, and look and see if there's some way that you can reach out to that person, let them know you'd be interested in getting to know them better. You can go out for a cup of coffee, go for a walk, meet before a regular group meeting. There are so many ways to reach beyond your loneliness that don't include sitting in front of the television eating Cheetos. Okay, that sounded a little too familiar. So I want to say one last thing about toxic people in your life. If when you retire, those relationships in your life you find are starting to go through natural changes, we mentioned empty nest, possibility of a late in life divorce, or job change or retirement, any number of things. If you notice that you have toxic personalities in your world, that is, people who have the constant complaint, or friends who seem disinterested in anything that you might want to do, or generally just people who are in a constant funk. I'm not suggesting you dump somebody on the curb and say, to heck with you, I'm not getting anything out of this relationship. But really do look and see if this person is actually an energy vacuum or a social vampire. Look and see, can you extricate yourself from that relationship? There are ways. It can be done slowly or quickly, but you want to take care of you, and getting yourself out of a toxic relationship can be a really important early step toward discovering a new and vital you. You're not dead until they start throwing dirt on your face. So stop acting dead. I know loneliness is hard, but sometimes loneliness is simply being alone. And if you like who you're with, then being alone can be a really good thing. Hey, thanks guys for watching. Be sure to subscribe to my channel if you like what I'm saying, and push the notifications button if you want to know whenever I'm putting out a new video. I put about 2 of these out a week. You can subscribe, you can watch some of my playlists. For each one of the books, I have a playlist that actually is centered around that particular book. Follow the chapters sequentially so you can actually follow along with the book while you're watching the videos. I hope you'll look into it and do your own study of one. And hey, we'll all get better together. Bye.